For the most part of boxing's history, if you wanted to know who the main character of the sport was, you didn't have to look very far. You would look at the heavyweight division, and for over a century, that champion was American.
And connecting!
But somewhere along the way, everything changed. And when you look at today's heavyweight division, you find out all the top fighters are not American, but from across the pond. American heavyweight boxing has lost its prestigious identity. It's gone extinct. But before I fully break down why, coupled with a few of my theories, I want to briefly break down the timeline, the major American triumphs and hardships that shaped heavyweight boxing as we know it today. This way we can understand just how big of a fall-off has taken place, how the new generation has failed to live up to the long-lasting and very deep American heavyweight boxing legacy. America has had a chokehold on the heavyweight division since 1841, when a man by the name of Tom Hyer won in a 101-round fight to be the first ever American heavyweight champion. At this time, they didn't even use gloves. They were fighting bare knuckle. After Tom Hyer was John L. Sullivan, and then from Sullivan to James Jeffries. And then the world saw one of the boldest men to ever put on a pair of gloves, Jack Johnson, the first ever black heavyweight world champion. He had to face all types of discrimination just to sniff the world title. No venue wanted to hold his first world title fight because they knew that if he had won, there would be possible riots. So the fight had to take place all the way in Sydney, Australia, even though he was American, while the champion, Tommy Burns, was Canadian.
At this very moment, in the early seconds of round 14, the police shut off the motion picture cameras and stepped into the ring, awarding the heavyweight championship of the world to Jack Johnson.
After Johnson's reign in the 1910s, the legendary Jack Dempsey would emerge, taking control of the sport in 1919. In the 1920s, he helped transform boxing into a massive commercial spectator sport, drawing boxing's first ever $1 million live gate with 91,000 people in attendance for his fight against George Carpenter. And if you ever watched or read Hajime no Ippo, you know him for his legendary offensive technique, the Dempsey roll.
They maneuver around the side of the ring. Now watch, there, that big left.
After Jack Dempsey's reign, the title would float around for some years until a true champion took a firm grip on it and would hold onto it for a record 12 years. The highly esteemed Joe Louis. Joe Louis broke barriers. During the segregated era, he was the first African American to achieve widespread hero worship and mainstream popularity in the United States. He was a unifying symbol of hope and democracy. He also defeated the greatest German boxer of all time in 1938, Max Schmeling.
An explosive right to the jaw hurts Max Schmeling. Ripping punches to the head. Joe steps back. A dynamite right to the jaw, and Schmeling goes down here in the first round.
2 years after Schmeling gave him his first defeat. This was a very significant fight, as this was the time of Nazi Germany, so Joe Louis being black and defeating their hero served as a global ideological proxy against their claims of Aryan supremacy. Louis would even serve in the army during World War II, helping boost morale. A few years later in the early 50s, another American great would emerge, Rocky Marciano, one of history's biggest examples of overcoming things that you cannot control. Marciano was undersized. He had the shortest reach in heavyweight boxing champion history. At just 68 inches, he was also a 5'10", but he didn't let that stop him. And by the end of his career, after his 3-year title reign,
Staying away now, be careful. That's the right hand, walk it.
he retired with an undefeated record of 49 wins and 0 losses, a feat that till this day has not been reached by another heavyweight champion, and most likely never will. Then the gentleman of boxing appeared, Floyd Patterson. He won the vacant title by knocking out Archie Moore in the same year that Marciano retired.
There, a terrific left hook drops Moore. What a shot. Archie doesn't know where he is.
He then beat thrashed by Sonny Liston in 1 round, a fighter that had to overcome both the NAACP and John F. Kennedy, who didn't want him to get his world title shot.
A left to grazing right and a solid left to the cheekbone. Drop the champion.
This was when the most iconic heavyweight of all time stepped up to the table, Muhammad Ali.
I saw Sonny Liston a few days ago, Cash.
Ain't he ugly? He's too ugly to be the world champ. The world champ should be pretty like me.
And after upsetting Liston in the first fight, he beat him again in the rematch to extinguish any doubts, producing not just the most iconic picture in boxing history, but one of the most iconic pictures in sports history, period. And this is where American heavyweight boxing reached another level, because Muhammad Ali wasn't simply another champion in the long line of American heavyweights. He was the beginning of an era where the heavyweight division became a greater battlefield for American supremacy. Ali would then go on to fight Joe Frazier, George Foreman, Ken Norton, some of the greatest heavyweights of all time. And even when the title wasn't in Ali's hands, the title remained firmly within American hands. Joe Frazier beat Ali, George Foreman took it from Frazier, and Ali came back and took it from Foreman. Think about this. The heavyweight titles weren't leaving America. They were simply exchanging hands between American legends. And when Ali's era eventually ended, the pattern continued. Larry Holmes became the next dominant American heavyweight. Then came Michael Spinks. Then came Mike Tyson. After Tyson, you had Evander Holyfield, who came up from cruiserweight, Riddick, Bowe. A whole new generation of American heavyweights fighting for control over the heavyweight division. Different fighters, different styles, different eras, but the same country was still on top. And this is the point I'm really trying to establish by explaining this timeline. For over a century, American heavyweight boxing wasn't just successful, it was the standard. If you wanted to become the biggest star in the sport, you had to become the heavyweight world champion. And if you wanted to become heavyweight world champion, much more likely than not, you had to go through an American. But eventually everything started to change. And after a century of domination, brilliance, resilience, triumph, who does America have to carry on the torch, to carry on the legacy? A fighter by the name of Jared Anderson and Richard Torrez, two fighters that have received knockout losses in their step-up fights. Jared Anderson against Martin Bakoli back in 2024. And Richard Torrez against Frank Sanchez earlier this year in 2026. So what exactly happened? Well, that's what we're going to get into now. Imagine you're a 12-year-old kid in America. You're on track to be about 6'5", 230, athletic, explosive, naturally coordinated. Boxing is almost 100% not going to be your first option. Boxing used to be a much bigger part of American culture, but now it's much more niche. You'll have both football and basketball coaches trying to recruit you. You've already been playing basketball and football all your life, playing Madden or 2K, and now more than ever, there's a lack of admiration for heavyweight boxing. After guys like Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield, there weren't any heavyweights to aspire to be like anymore. Since the 90s, just about every kid wanted to be like Mike. And I'm not talking about Mike Tyson, I'm talking about Michael Jordan, guys like Allen Iverson, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Stephen Curry, Kyrie Irving. The cultural impact of basketball has just blown the sport of boxing out the water. Then when you do have someone you admire in boxing, like a Floyd Mayweather or a Pernell Whitaker, you end up finding out that those guys fight at weight classes where you have to weigh in at 140 pounds. So their boxing looks much different than your boxing, being 6'5", 250. In America, there's no structured pathway. For instance, in Japan, you have boxing clubs at various high schools and universities where they compete in tournaments. This doesn't exist in America. You basically have to be put into boxing by your parents. Maybe your dad is a trainer at a gym or used to box himself. Otherwise, the vast majority of kids might not ever step foot into a boxing gym a day in their lives. Then even if you do find a gym, the chances of finding a high-quality trainer is low. Then for other sports like basketball and football, you have the opportunity to compete in high school, with the opportunity to get scholarships for college, alongside the newly added NIL deal money. Honestly, as a parent, if you really want what's best for your child, you probably wouldn't put them in boxing unless it's their passion, as the risk to reward ratio for boxing is just a million times worse than other sports. It's much harder to reach the top in boxing compared to the structured sports like basketball and football, and then the pay gap is also super wide. There are college athletes making more money with NIL than actual boxing contenders. And if your child doesn't make it to the top in these other sports, such as football and basketball, at least they made it to college on a full or partial scholarship, so they have something to fall back on. There's nothing like that on that level for boxing. You're asking a young athlete to dedicate years of his life to one of the most dangerous sports on earth, with no guarantee he'll ever become financially successful. Meanwhile, that same athlete might have a much clearer path through college football or basketball. For America's best athletes, boxing isn't necessarily the safest investment for their talent. I mean, there are NBA role players that are making what a boxer could make for their whole career in just 1 year. Even now as I'm making this video, it actually makes no logical sense to pursue boxing as a 6'5" athletic specimen growing up in America. Here are the last American heavyweights not named Deontay Wilder to have a successful world title defense. Chris Byer with the IBF in 2005, John Ruiz with the WBA in 2004. For the WBC, you have to go back all the way to 1995 with Oliver McCall, as some notable American fighters like Mike Tyson and Frank Bruno held the belt after, but never defended it. As for the WBO, since it's been a fully recognized title, it's never been done. You can say what you want about Deontay Wilder, that he wasn't very skilled and that all he had was power, but at the end of the day, he filled a void that American heavyweight boxing desperately needed. But even he would fall victim to European dominance. He also only started boxing at 20 years old, which further proves the point that boxing is very rarely the first option. Since the Soviet Union collapsed, it allowed a huge pool of talent to start competing worldwide professionally, not limiting them to that amateur and Olympic level, which is partly why they're so good in the amateurs, because they've been limited to perfecting that amateur style for years. Honestly, I do think things may not be looking too good for the future of American heavyweight boxing, as a big part of development as a boxer is the ability to get good working with other competition, to get in good sparring. It's part of why sections of boxing weight classes are dominated by specific regions. As we know, most of America's talent is around the lightweight and welterweight division, while most of Europe's talent is around the heavyweight division. Iron sharpens iron, but how can iron sharpen iron when there's no iron available to sharp? America has basically abandoned the heavyweight division, and other countries have taken advantage. American heavyweight boxing doesn't have a single problem, it's a combination of problems that have been building for years. Athletes have more profitable options. There's no structure, no desire. Even looking at Jared Anderson, who's only 26 years old, so his career is far from over. But if you ask anyone, they'll tell you that they don't see real hunger in his eyes, the hunger that it takes to truly be great. And when talent does appear, it doesn't have the ecosystem to push it to the next level. Meanwhile, the rest of the world keeps developing. I mean, look at Moses Atama. The way he's looking, it's as if he may be the next great heavyweight, and I don't see any upcoming American fighter being good enough to challenge him. So it's looking like European domination will continue for the time being. Boxing needs to be made more accessible and attractive to young talent. It needs to be made into something that a young American athlete actually wants to pursue. I wouldn't even say that the talent is gone either. It's just being recruited by everyone else. For over a century, the heavyweight division was America's kingdom. Now America has to figure out a way to take it back. Comment down below some factors that I may have not mentioned. Remember to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching the whole video.